Is fasting. The term fasting means to abstain from food, solid food. And contemporarily, when we're talking about fasting, we're talking about liquid food as well. That is juices, fruit juices, and vegetable juices. Now, fasting, the term meant to abstain, and we usually consider a fast when you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning. You have a period of time where you break your fast, and they call that break fast. And that's because of the history of fasting. That's where the term breakfast comes from, or breakfast as we say, but it means break your fast. And another thing is a person should have their stomach empty before they go to sleep, and that's why they say, are you fast asleep? Meaning abstain from food, fast asleep. So the words, if you trace them back in their origin, you'll find out always refer to a period of time when people fasted. Now, for African people, fasting occurred during certain scheduled times of the year. During harvesting season, just before harvest, there would be a fast. See, when you have plenty of food around, and just before the food supply dwindles down, the amount of food you eat decreases, and that puts you on a fast. And then you have the harvest when there's plenty of food again. So between the harvesting season, there was a time when you fasted. These were scheduled by nature. Then there are fasts that are scheduled by the sun, and we use the solstice for that, the winter solstice, the summer solstice. That's when the sun is the highest point from the equator. So they help you schedule a fast. And there are fasts based on religions, the 40 days and 40 nights without food, which is called quarantine in the Italian. That's where the word quarantine comes from, fasting. So we have fasting that are scheduled by religions, fasting that's scheduled by the sun, and fasting that are scheduled by harvesting seasons. Nature, of course, causes you to fast. All animals, whenever they are sick, they stop eating and they'll go get a herb. A dog will do it, a cat, as well as horse and cattle. They will go on a fast. They will just stop eating. And that puts them on a fast, because a fast has a curative element to it. That's why we fasted. It helps to regenerate the system and nourish the system. So it's a time when you give back to nature. During the time that you're eating, you're taking from nature, and during the fast, you're supposedly giving back to nature, and that gives you a balance. And that's what fast was meant to do, to put you back in equilibrium with nature. A time when there's fasting, a time when there's not fasting. So the fast as it's known today includes liquid food, as I mentioned before. And when you're using liquid food, such as apple juice, raw apple juice, orange juice, grapefruit juice, and vegetable juices, spinach, beet, carrot, that's when you concentrate the juice from the plant. So whenever you're dealing with a concentrate, you have to take a lot more fluids. So you drink more water when you're drinking liquid, such as the juices and the vegetable juices and fruit juices. So your water content should be escalated because of the concentrated nature of the juices. So that helps flush out your system. Let's just start from someone who's never been on a fast before. The biggest fear usually is, I'm going to starve to death. For some reason, people just think they're going to starve and drop and die. But that doesn't happen. Usually this business about starving, that's a starvation diet. We're not talking about starvation, we're talking about a controlled period of time when you're on water or juices or liquids. That's fasting as opposed to starvation. But most of the time when you say fasting, people are thinking of starving to death, but we're not talking about that. Not at all. We're talking about a controlled period of time where you're abstaining from eating solid foods to rest your digestive system. Now, the fear about starving to death, that doesn't happen. The fear of being so hungry that you'll just run and get something to eat, usually when the small intestines and large intestines are emptied of all the food, that's when you lose the craving for food. There are things that you can take for cravings, such as glutamine or glutamic acid, which is an amino acid, which reduces the craving. There's a herb called quassia, which reduces craving, and there's a mineral supplement, as we call it, called chromium, which also reduces craving. Quassia is named, the herb quassia is named after an African man who was using that herb during that particular time, and the Europeans wanted it, so they chased him down to South America where this herb was found, and found out where the herb was and how to locate it, and after they found this information, they killed the African man by the name of Quassia. So it's a kind of a mixture of our history involved in this herb, involving chromium, involving glutamic acid as well. So these substances, the supplement of chromium, the herb quassia, and the amino acid glutamic acid, glutamine, help reduce the craving. So you can take that while you're on the first 3 days of your fast to help reduce the craving and the kind of impulse that you're going to starve and die of death or something of that sort. Let's just go back to, like I said, someone who's never fasted before, with these misconceptions about starving to death, and the misconception about having a craving, they'll just run and get something to eat, and also the misconception that their body, when they're on a fast, is eating itself up. That comes out of European mythology and superstitions. In their system of thoughts, as some people like to call it, the Europeans believe that they are being attacked by someone, or they're going to attack someone. So they're constantly in this dichotomy of either they're going to attack something or something's going to attack them. Either they're going to be attacked by a germ that gives them a cold, or either they're going to attack the germ that's going to give them the cold with some kind of medicine or something of that sort. So they always believe in this attack and taking. Either I take something from you or you take something from me. That's based in their superstition. So they believe either you're eating or something is eating you. That's why they say, what's eating you? That sort of terminology comes out of European superstition and mythology. So they believe that when you go on a fast, that your body is resorting to cannibalism and eating itself. That is just plain stupid, actually. I don't want to be scientific about it anymore. That's just stupid. What happens is you have for example, you have a ship that's at sea, and so the ship is about to sink, and you figure the only way to save this ship from sinking is to get rid of anything that's going to hold it down, put too much weight on it. So you start throwing out the extra furniture you have on the ship, the stereo, the TV, the video, God forbid, I'm sorry, keep your video. Throw out the chairs and the tables and all that sort of thing to stop this ship from sinking. That's what the body does. It gets rid of all excess, all weak things that's going to stop it from preserving life. And that's what the Europeans call your body eating itself. That is not true. What happens is all the mucus and congestion that gets in the way of the two cells rubbing together. See, one cell rubs to the right, the other rubs to the left, and these cells rubbing together creates energy, pure energy. And anything that stops these cells from getting together, the body gets away from. Because the body needs this energy, so it throws out the mucus and gives you a cold, as you call it, and you may break out with bumps and things of that sort. It gets rid of it, throws out all these things, throws away all the toxins that are stored in the fat, because that is stopping the body from making energy, stopping the two cells from rubbing together. So it gets rid of all of this excess weight. And that's why you find after the first week of a fast, according to studies done in Sweden, and other European countries who have kept people in a glass container or isolated them in a room and watched them under scientific observation and only gave them water, they found that they gained weight in the second week of fasting because their body was creating pure energy. This is something that happens on a fast. I know it's kind of hard for you to probably understand, but the body is creating pure energy, and therefore is able to gain pure weight instead of fat weight, and that happens during the fast. So around the third day is when your small intestines, which you call your stomach, this is your small intestines, the stomach is up higher behind the rib cage, the small intestines empties itself, the colon empties itself, and you no longer have any food in your body. That occurs on the third day of the fast, and that's when you lose the craving. So there's no fear about starving and your body eating itself, because that does not occur in nature. That's really just a superstition. So we start our fast the same way you start in life. You see, the food is introduced to you gradually. You're not born and in the first day of your birth, your mother gives you a full course meal. That's not how it's done, even in nature. So this fasting has to be introduced to you gradually. So what you do is you reduce the amount of combinations of food that you're taking into your body. You're used to eating maybe collard greens and a starch, a potato, and some meat, and maybe some tea and coffee, and a glass of milk, and spaghetti, and cheese, and whatever these other concoctions are that people seem to think of food. You're used to eating all these things, so you reduce the amount of food combinations that you have till you reduce it down to maybe 2 combinations of food. Say, for instance, you would just one day you would eat apples and oranges and pears and tangerines and melons and strawberries, and you start just reducing it down till the day before you go on your fast you're only eating one type of food. Say you're just eating oranges all that day, so you're reducing the food combinations down from 3 to 2 to 1. You eat all oranges for one day. And then when you go on your fast, you're drinking one type of juice all day, and then you start drinking 2 combinations, pears and apple juice, and then you start making more combinations of juices, lemons and oranges and grapefruit. You're making more combinations, and that gives you a combination of nutrients. But this is how you slowly introduce these combinations to your system, just as it's slowly introduced to you as a child. So before we go on the fast, we reduce the combinations of food. We reduce the cooking time that you're used to having with food, where you're cooking food maybe for how some people cook a pot of beans for 2 days and collard greens for 3 weeks. We don't want to do that. We want to lightly steam the greens. So we're getting it to a raw state. And while you're doing this, always take a digestive enzyme, because your body is probably not used to digesting raw foods. So you don't want to tax the system that much. So take a digestive enzyme all the time while you're taking raw juices, so your body can get all the nutrients out of the juices. There is a fasting kind of craze where fast will save you from all these illnesses and this and that, but you can only get out of the fast what you put in it. It's important that you go on the fast correctly, and it's important that you maintain the fast correctly, and it's important that you come off the fast correctly. If you come off the fast with a whole lot of combinations of food, heavy starches, you have just ruined everything that you've done. You want to come off of it gradually, go into it gradually, just as nature introduces you to food gradually. So we, for instance, the first day of getting into the fast, we'll just use 3 days. So the first day before, on this 3-day period before we go into the fast, we're eating apples, oranges, bananas, papayas, mangoes, and we're eating quite a variety of fruits, because fruits cleanse the body, whereas vegetables tend to stabilize the body. So we want to cleanse the body. And so we're eating those combinations of fruits, and then we reduce it down to, say, 2 or 3 pears and apples and oranges. And then on the 3rd day, that's the day before the fast, we eat only one type of fruit, the fruit of our choice, whatever fruit you choose. And then we go into the fast, which can be a liquid juice fast, as I mentioned before, or a water fast. Now, we don't want to go into a week or 2-week or a month fast. We're not trying to do anything heroic here. We'll probably go into a 1-day fast to start off, and then gradually work our way to 2 days or 3 days or a week of just fasting on liquids, knowing that we have to dilute these juices because they're too concentrated. So when you're making raw orange juice, you want to drink 1/2 raw orange juice and 1/2 water. Mix them together. And then you want to drink 1/3 orange juice and 2/3 water. Mix them together until the 3rd day of the fast you're drinking just water. And then you go out of that fast the same way you came in. 1/3 juice, 2/3 water. 1/2 juice, 1/2 water. And then you're drinking just the plain juice by itself without the water. And then you're going back into eating one type of fruit, then 2 types, then the combination, and then you're out of the fast again. So you can approach the water fast that way and the juice fast that way, knowing that there are certain healing elements involved in all the fruits and vegetables. They are usually based on the color breakdown of the melanin. The pineal gland makes the melanin, and it has a color breakdown, which we call indigo, violet, blue, and orange, and red, and green. These are the colors made from melanin, and we want to concentrate into our fruits the same way. We want to use a variety of colors, which gives a variety of nutrients, which stimulates the hormones in the fruits. Because fruits possess hormones, and these same hormones go into your body and stimulate the hormones in your body. Hormones drive the energy, give it a direction, tell it which way to go. So we are driving the pineal gland, which stimulates the pituitary, which makes a melanocyte kind of stimulating hormone, melanocyte stimulating hormones, which stimulates the melanin in the pineal gland. So we're getting into the whole triangle of the glandular system. We're stimulating each gland by the various colors. Usually, when you're dealing with the colors, the higher colors such as the sun, which is yellow and orange and red, and you're coming down to the darker colors, you're coming closer to the earth. You're coming closer to the original source of the color, which is the pineal gland. So we want to use a variety of colors. We want to use purple fruits, such as grapes, and we want to use orange fruits, and we use green fruits, such as oranges, which are dyed orange by the Europeans. They're not really orange. So we want to use a variety of fruits, and the fruits that have a variety of colors, because usually they have at least 1 to 2 colors to the skin. They possess 1 or 2 or more colorings that stimulate the body. Because the body is a rainbow producing instrument. The more of the rainbow you put in the body, the more of the rainbow you get out of the body. That's why it's important while you're on the fast to stimulate your pineal gland by blinking at the sun before noon and afternoon to help stimulate that pineal gland. That should be done every day, as well as taking a bath every day, because the toxins are being released through your skin and you want to get them out. So you take a bath to help flush those toxins out and get them off your skin. And the waste is accumulating because, as I mentioned before, you have this ship that's sinking. So the body's throwing away all the excess baggage. And so all this excess waste is accumulating in the colon, small intestines, large intestines. So enema would be necessary. Enema can consist of catnip herb tea, which relaxes. And you can use a stimulant kind of tea also in that, a little bit of lobelia. Or you may want to add 1 or 2 leaves of senna, which is a laxative, to help get the waste out of the system. It's very helpful for the body to take some herbs like Irish moss or some herb like slippery elm, because they form a lot of mucus and help wash the system too. So we want to be mindful. There are quite a variety of teas to be taken while you're on the fast to help cleanse your body, because that's the purpose of the fast, to regenerate the body, spiritualize the body, and cleanse the body. The fast is holistic. If we just look at it as a physical mechanism, then that's all we're going to get out of it is physical. We're going to be earthbound. We're not going to stimulate our mental being, our spiritual being, and our human being in its totality. So we want to use some herbs to help the healing and the cleansing progress along. We want to go and get some portiaco. We want to use some chaparral, some golden seal, echinacea, red clover, burdock for the skin, chickweed for the skin. Such herbs as that to help cleanse the body, knowing that the process is we want to pull the mucus from deep inside out. So we want to cleanse the lymphatic system with echinacea. We want to cleanse the blood with red clover. We want to cleanse the skin with burdock and chickweed, and looking at all the different healings we can do. Juniper berries for the pancreas, yarrow for the pancreas, red raspberry for the pancreas as well. We want to cleanse every organ system, including liver. We may want to cleanse that with some milk thistle and various herbs that are beneficial for the liver, such as dandelion. So we're going from one herb to another herb, working on each organ system in the body to cleanse it, cleansing the lungs with mullein and with ginkgo and with lobelia, as I mentioned before. And we need to work at not only the lungs, we have to work at cleansing the kidney. We can use uva ursi, we can use buchu, we can use kuba berries, we can use palmetto berries. We want to cleanse each system, the blood, the kidney, the pancreas, the liver, the large intestines, small intestines with slippery elm, as I mentioned, Irish moss, those things that form a lot of mucus in the body. So we're using the teas, we're using the herbs, we're using the vegetables, as some people like to call them, the carrots, the beets, beet juice, carrot juice, we're using spinach juice, we're using the leaves of turnips, we're using turnip greens as well, and turnips and beet tops and carrot tops, we're using parsley. We're making a combination of vegetable juices to cleanse the system. So all of these are part of the cleansing action of the herb, along with the digestive enzyme to release some of that burden of breaking down the food off the liver. Because The liver has other responsibilities in the body other than concentrating on making bile. The liver senses the red blood cells and say this cell should go, this cell should stay, and whatever cells should stay, it turns it into bile to help break down toxins in the system. So we want to use those as well. Some fenugreek perhaps because it has choline in it and it helps emulsify fat. Lecithin does the same thing as well. And so guar gum helps slow down the burning of substances. So if you're having a problem such as diabetes mellitus or pancreas disease, then you not only want to focus on the yarrow and the raspberry and the juniper berries, but you also want to help slow down the burning process of the sugars. So you may want to use glucomannan, which is a herb. This helps slow down the burning, and guar gum slows down the burning and releases some of the stress off the pancreas. So the cleansing, we're using herbs, we're using juice, as I mentioned before, red beets for the liver and as well as for the blood, and of course carrots have a lot of calcium in them, and that's good for your system, and vitamin C such as you find in yams. We want to use the yam as well if we're using the carrot juice, because the yam has the vitamin A, the vitamin C. It's good for diabetes, it's good for digestion, and it's a sprout, and so therefore it has a concentrated amount of energy in it. So we're using all these combinations of plants and herbs, flushing out our colon with enema daily, with catnip, as I mentioned before, 1 or 2 leaves of senna, and some soothing kind of herb along with it, some slippery elm, and some garlic. Catnip and garlic is also an excellent enema to give yourself. And the baths, as well as blinking the eyes, looking at the sun before noon and afternoon, and walking barefoot to get that high amount of concentrated charge out of the body, and doing some spiritual exercises as well. This is done with herbs such as gotu kola, which helps bring a lot of blood to the brain. So we want to infuse the brain with blood with gotu kola, and use herbs such as false unicorn to help stimulate the glands, or damiana. So we're using gotu kola, false unicorn, or blessed thistle, and damiana in a combination to stimulate the pineal gland, because this fast is not going to work without the proper stimulation of the pineal gland, because that's the first line of defense for black people. Aside from that, the pineal gland makes the nucleus, as they call it in science, of every cell in the body, so it's responsible for making the brains of every cell in the body. So we have to properly stimulate the pineal gland, which usually gets very sluggish and deficient in its production of melanin on a European diet, because European diets are anti-melanin from their beginning and to their end, because they're so mucus forming and backwards in their establishment. So we want to reconstitute and reestablish the balance of the pineal gland, and this may take some lecithin to help wash out the liver, to free it so it can help, because the liver gives the sugar supply to the brain that it needs to operate, and it may take some lysine, maybe 1 or 2 days of lysine in between your when you're on your water, not when you're on your juice. 2,000 milligrams will probably do that, and that helps reestablish the balance of the pineal gland, pituitary, hypothalamus, the thymus, the thyroid, and adrenal glands. Remembering that whenever the body is in a crisis, and the body perceives the fast as a crisis, it will fire off the adrenal glands, which sits on top of your kidney, and the adrenal glands make something called adrenaline. And adrenaline is simply something that's used for defense, fight or flight kind of response, just as the parasympathetic system, part of the autonomic nervous system, is used for fight or flight to get you out of a crisis situation. So that adrenaline will probably be excess in your body, and only the liver can get rid of this excess adrenaline. That's why it's important to work on the liver with yarrow, dandelion, and milk thistle, and other herbs that are good for cleansing the liver. Because the adrenal glands are going to fire off, and they sometimes become fatigued, and pantothenic acid helps relieve that fatigue on the adrenal glands, and you can get those from just the hormones in the vegetables and fruits themselves, such as mangoes, papayas, kiwi, star fruit. All of these help establish the balance. They are tropical fruits, and they're the fruits that our ancestors ate, such as Imhotep, Hatshepsut, Ahmes, and Ramesses, and Menes. Narman is called catfish, the man who united the two kingdoms, Upper and Lower Egypt, fighting the those marauding bandits known as Europeans. All of our ancestors was raised on this diet, and it was done on purpose. That's why we produce such a higher civilization and produce such technologies and sciences as calculus and astronomy and architecture, because our diet was holistic and natural, and it included fasting periodically, based, as I mentioned before, on the harvesting seasons or on the solstice, and based on the inherent rhythm of the body, because African people are on a solar rhythm, whereas the Europeans are on a lunar rhythm. They are mostly moon-concentrated people. That's why you find so many references to the moon in their culture. They speak of romance about the moon. When they get married, they go on a honeymoon. They have stars at night and the moon glows in your hair. Everything is about the moon. They are mostly moon-centered people, and we are solar-centered people. So to go on that kind of a regimen of diet is anti the rhythm of our system. So we mostly go into a 3-year kind of rhythm. That's what the pineal gland is on. Our eating was based on the sun. The metric system is based on the sun. The calendar is based on the sun. Our religion, the Kemetic religion, uses symbology of the sun, Ra and Re. The child is carried in the solar center of the mother. The mother's umbilical cord is on the sun. Birthing of children occurred every 3 years in Africa. That's based on the sun. Everything was solar centered in our culture. And that's because of the high amount of importance and respect that our ancestors had for the pineal gland, which is stimulated by the hormones in fruits, which possess all the nutrients that the pineal gland needs. It helps stabilize the balance. So we want to reaffirm that balance with the fruits on our fast and lean more toward tropical fruits, as the Europeans call it, the mangoes, papayas, the kiwi, the star fruit, all those so-called tropical fruits. The pineapple, they are very responsive to the sun. They ferment and they ripen in the sun. They're very responsive, and they're cooked by the sun naturally, whereas the Europeans try to duplicate that fire energy and just started cooking foods and destroy the whole nutrient content of the foods by cooking them. It depletes the foods of their vitamins. It makes the calcium and magnesium too coarse to be digested. So in a raw form, the food is highly digested, and so this raw energy which we're getting from the fast is what's going to rekindle our system. The other things, aside from the importance of the solarity of the fast and of our system and its penile melanocyte foundation, is to do the proper spiritual exercise. I don't mean by spirit what perhaps some religious structure means by some club, as there really are, these religious structures. I'm talking about spirit in the purest African sense of the word. To be spiritual means to know why you're on earth and your purpose in life. That's what spirit means in African thought. So what we want to do is reaffirm why we're here and our purpose in life. And that is possessed in our genetic code. And our genetic code, again, is stored in our melanin, which is produced by our pineal gland. So what we want to do is generate all the energy we can electromagnetically by electromagnetically stimulating it with the pineal gland. That is the purpose of visualizing, for example, while you're on the fast, to spiritualize your cerebral spinal fluid. That's the fluid that's in your backbone, as you call it. It goes from the ventricles, these empty spaces in your brain that are filled with fluid. This fluid is in it called cerebral spinal fluid, and it goes down your back and up your spine again. It's milked by your muscles. So what you do is visualize the cerebral spinal fluid down where your genitals are. Rest your hands on your knees, sit slightly forward, tilt your head down like this, and visualize the solar system. If you can't do that, just hold an ankh in your hand by your navel and visualize the energy coming up from there, slowly coming up your spinal column, slowly coming up to the top of your head, and going back down your spine again, back down to your genital organs through your solar center. That spiritualizes or gives your cerebral spinal fluid electromagnetic charge, because the pineal gland is rooted in the third ventricle, which we have that trinity again, the mother, the father, and God, the man and woman and God, the Trinity concept, which the Europeans call Father and Son, and Holy Ghost eliminated the woman because they have inferiority about their women for some reason. I don't know why. But in any case, we reaffirm this kind of trinity of man again and woman again. And that's what the pineal gland does. When the cerebral spinal fluid comes back up to the ventricles, the pineal gland charges it electromagnetically, and then it's sent back down. And they call that the regenerative principle, or generating yourself, or generating your tree, because your spine looks like a tree, and they call that the tree of life with its branches, or they call dermatomes that go through your body all the way around, which the Chinese call meridians, which we call a tree. So we want to do that proper spiritual exercise while you're sitting or while you're standing. And while you're doing this exercise, deep breathing is very important. You breathe in very slow, you exhale very slow. You breathe in very slow, you exhale very slow. As you are visualizing and feeling your spinal fluid go up from your genitals through your solar center all the way up to your pineal gland and back down again, going from your right side up and your left side down. The same applies for women, except they have two centers. See, we have 12 melanin centers in our brain and 22 spiritual centers in our brain, where the Europeans have 2 melanin sites in their brain, so that kind of exercise limits us. And the Chinese have fewer melanin sites in their brain, so if we do on a Chinese kind of spiritual exercise or meditation, it limits us because they don't have as many melanin centers as African people. The Chinese, the Japanese, we can't use their systems, and least of all, we cannot use the European system because it stops us from going to the 12 centers. The Chinese, the Japanese will probably stop at 7 and say you have 7 chakras or 7 energy centers in your body. That's what they have. We have 12. The Europeans have 2. So the highest melaninated people are African people, so we can't use these other cultural spiritual exercises because they limit us spiritually. They're anti-melanin. That's why I'm saying you have to approach this thing and understand that within your structure is the temple of God. That's why they call the body a temple, and explains all of these things to you. So we're going to go up in 12 times for our 12 centers and do it that way. Not 2 times, not 7 times, not 9 times, but 12 times. Deep breathing and visualizing this energy going up and going back down. That's the spiritual exercise that we should be on while we're doing this fast. Even if the fast is for 1 day, we can prepare for the fast using 3 days, do a 1-day water fast, and come off the fast in 3 days. And while we're doing this, we're taking enemas and baths and doing our spiritual exercise, using the sun properly, walking barefooted, and we're keeping clean thoughts in our mind. We're not against nature, we're not against ourselves, we're not against other people, and we are least of all not smoking, we're not drinking, we're not sneaking and eating meat, we're not doing any salt, any sugar, we're not using any lard or fats or any of these kind of modern European foods to contaminate and pollute and poison our system. So we're abstaining from that altogether. We're not into arguing, fussing, arguing with ourselves, because it takes practice to argue. So usually people argue with themselves, then they argue with another person. So we're going to do all of these things, create harmony within ourselves while we're on this fast. Remember that there's a very important about the herbs that I mentioned before, the fenugreek, the rose hip, hibiscus, beverage kind of herbs you can drink, hibiscus and rose hip, which tastes good and cooling to the body. Sometimes you may want to put a pinch of cayenne in one of your herbal drinks, or a pinch of cayenne in your vegetable drink or fruit drink to kind of stimulate your system. But we want to keep the whole body participating in the fast because it's a holistic fast. It's for your body, your mind, as well as your spirit. That's why we have the meditation, which Africans use, a trance. And we go into a trance state, which the Europeans call meditating, which keeps them in a kind of mediating part of their selves. We want to trance and go into a transition between ourselves and God, which we call a trance. And we want to do all of these things while we're on a fast, understanding that the fast is not going to destroy our health, it's going to build our health. It's going to regenerate our system. It's going to help get rid of the pollutions and toxins that accumulate in your body and get stored in your muscles and in your bones and in your fat tissue. So periodically, we should use fasting. Maybe once a month, once every solstice, in between the seasons, the summer, winter, and fall, for religious purposes, 40 days and 40 nights. Whatever the schedule we're going to use, we should follow that. Fasting once a week is good also. where you eat for 6 days and one day you just take liquids. I mean, the fast can be geared to your needs, whether you're in a contaminated urban environment or in a country environment or not. You can gauge a fast for your needs. One day out of the week you're going to just drink fruit juice raw or vegetable juice raw and take digestive enzymes to help you break down the food, and take an enema to help your body get rid of the waste. So fasting is a tool that we should put in our lifestyles and make it rather important for us. And this is very important for the children to see you do this, to exercise control, because by exercising control, it gives you more control and more ability to be holistic and Afrocentric, because you cannot be African unless you eat African, and you cannot dress African and be African unless you eat African. All of this is part of our Afrocentric lifestyle, fasting. I hope you try it.